"Get out now!" Tara shouted, pointing at me like I was a stranger in the house I had lived in for 40 years. My grandson saw everything. My son said nothing. That's when I realized. My daughter-in-law was trying to take control of my own home, but she had no idea what I had planned. Before we continue, help us grow by subscribing to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Everett Dale. I'm 72, and I've spent most of my life restoring old books in Shelburne, Vermont. I found my place in the world among yellowed pages and worn-out spines. The house I live in used to belong to my parents, and before that, my grandparents, one of those two-story homes that seem to tell stories just by looking at them. The front porch still has the same oak boards my father laid down in the 60s. Every room here breathes memories, and I've always felt like the guardian of this family legacy. It's funny how we get used to the spaces in our lives, like they're part of who we are. To me, this house has always been more than just four walls and a roof. After Margaret passed away 3 years ago, I found peace in the upstairs library. Shelves from floor to ceiling, filled with first editions I've restored over the decades. The attic held family albums and old letters I'd revisit on quiet afternoons. It was a simple life, but it had meaning. Solitude never really bothered me. If anything, it felt good after so many years listening to the constant noise of the outside world. Those rooms were my entire universe, and I was content with that. Every book I restored felt like bringing something back to life after time had worn it down, and that gave me a sense of completeness few people would understand. Jordan, my son, grew more distant after he moved to Boston. He'd visit maybe once a month, usually bringing my grandson Theo. Pure joy in my days. The boy loved books as much as I did. He'd spend hours sitting on the library rug, flipping through illustrated storybooks. While Jordan was on his phone or replying to emails, Theo and I would dive into fantastic worlds. Those visits were when laughter filled the halls again. The boy had that kind of genuine curiosity that reminded me of myself as a kid, lost in stories that felt more real than reality itself. When Jordan called and said Tara was going through a rough patch and needed some time out of the city, I didn't think twice. She was a holistic therapist, worked with crystals and energy, things I didn't really understand but respected. "Dad, it's just for a few weeks until she gets back on her feet," he said. Of course I offered my home. Family is family, right? I got the guest room ready, cleared space in the garage for her things. I thought it might be nice to have company after living alone for so long. Margaret always loved when the house was full of people, and I figured maybe it was time to open the doors again. Margaret used to say our home had a soul of its own, that it welcomed anyone who came with good intentions. I believe that. The walls had witnessed births, birthdays, family Christmases, even her final days. Every piece of furniture, every painting, every object had its place and its story. I never imagined someone could see all that as just property. Anyway, that's how I opened my door to Tara. And that's how she came into my life, bringing changes I never saw coming. Tara showed up on a Tuesday morning with 3 cars packed full of boxes, crystals, and furniture that needed a temporary home. She was polite that first day, thanked me for the hospitality, even brought homemade brownies. But by the second week, the little suggestions began. "Everett, don't you think this room would feel more harmonious without so many old photos?" Then it was my books in the living room. "They make the space feel too heavy, energetically," she said, stacking them into boxes. I just nodded, thinking it was temporary. My old office on the first floor became her healing space, where she welcomed clients for energy alignment sessions. She hung wind chimes, installed water fountains, and scattered crystals everywhere. "I need you to avoid coming in here during my sessions," she said, putting a little "do not disturb" sign on the door. It felt strange being locked out of a room in my own house, but I thought about her emotional recovery. Jordan had said she was in a fragile state. I tried to be understanding, even when it started to really bother me. Next, she took over the kitchen. Tara completely reorganized the pantry, hid my utensils, and replaced everything with copper pots and ingredients I'd never seen in my life. "Aluminum blocks the positive energy in food," she explained, stashing my old iron kettle in the highest cabinet. Making a simple cup of coffee turned into an archaeological expedition. When I gently complained, she sighed like she was dealing with a stubborn child. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just settling in, She was taking over. The intrusions got subtler but more constant. During dinner, she'd say things like, "Wow, you forgot you told me that story yesterday." Or, "Are you sure it was Tuesday? I think it was Thursday." Little things that made me question my own memory. One time, she posted a photo on social media of us on the porch with the caption, "Transitions aren't always easy, but love and patience work miracles. Taking care of our loved ones is a gift." I read it 3 times trying to figure out why it bothered me so much. She was talking about me like I was some kind of rehab project. Eventually, the changes reached my bedroom. "Everett, you really shouldn't be climbing those stairs every day. What if you fall during the night?" Tara stood in my doorway with a look of fake concern. "I set up the downstairs room for you. It's much safer." When I said that had been my room for over 40 years, she let out a long, dramatic sigh. That's when I realized I was facing something I never expected, emotional abuse disguised as care. And I knew none of this was really about my safety. It was about control. The following weekend, Tara knocked on my bedroom door with that carefully controlled expression I was starting to recognize. "Everett, we need to talk about your move downstairs," she said, walking in without waiting for permission. "This isn't a suggestion." The firmness in her voice caught me off guard. When I argued that I had slept in that room for over 40 years, that Margaret had died in that bed, she crossed her arms. "This isn't a negotiation." Jordan was downstairs in the living room. I could hear the TV on. I tried to walk past her to grab some clothes from the closet, but Tara physically stepped in front of me. "You're not understanding the seriousness of this situation," she said, blocking my way. "If you fall on those stairs, who's going to be held responsible? Me." There was something different in her eyes in that moment, a coldness I'd never seen before. It was like the gentle therapist mask had finally dropped. "Your things are already being moved," she added, pointing to the boxes in the hallway. That hit me like a punch to the gut. "Jordan agreed it was best for everyone," she continued in that condescending tone. The familiar trap was unfolding right in front of me, and I could barely process what I was hearing. My own son had signed off on this forced move without even talking to me. They had discussed my life, my home, my independence like I was a misbehaving child. The sense of betrayal was almost physical. How could I have been so naive? When I tried to push back again, Tara completely lost it. "Get out of the way. Just go downstairs and stop being stubborn." Her voice echoed through the hallways of the house I had always called mine. She was literally kicking me out of my own bedroom. Theo appeared in the hallway just then, his eyes wide, witnessing his grandfather being treated like a burden. He just stood there, not knowing what to do. And Jordan? I could hear he had turned off the TV downstairs. I walked down the stairs in silence, feeling the weight of every step beneath my feet. Theo followed me, whispering, "Grandpa, are you okay?" I nodded, but I was far from okay. Jordan showed up in the living room, avoided eye contact, and mumbled something about this being for the best. That was the final straw. It wasn't just about a bedroom or some stairs. It was about them treating me like I was disposable, an obstacle to whatever plans they had for my property. That afternoon, lying in the strange downstairs room, one thing became clear. They wanted me out of the way. Theo came to visit me before bedtime. "Grandpa, why did Mom yell at you?" The innocence in his question broke my heart. "Sometimes adults do things we don't understand, Theo," I told him, holding him tight. "But don't worry about Grandpa." He stayed with me for a while, flipping through a picture book I had managed to save from Tara's energy-cleansing purge. When he finally went upstairs to sleep, I was left alone with my thoughts, and with a decision that was starting to take shape. Around midnight, I quietly went up to the attic. Among the old albums and document boxes, I found what I was looking for: the original deed to the house, birth certificates, inheritance records. I also grabbed my father's old atlas, where he always kept a small key hidden, the key to the safety deposit box at the bank. While Tara slept in what used to be my bedroom, I was putting together my response. They had completely underestimated who they were dealing with, and that's when everything changed. The day after I found the documents in Tara's box, I called Raymond Cho. We hadn't spoken in 2 years, but he owed me a moral debt we both remembered well. Raymond was a real estate attorney, And years ago, I'd helped save his marriage by restoring a torn love letter after a nasty fight. "Everett, what a surprise," he said when he answered. "I need your help, Raymond. It's urgent and delicate." He must have heard something in my voice because his tone changed instantly. "Come to my office today," he replied without hesitation. Raymond got straight to the point after reviewing the evidence I had photographed. "They're going to go for guardianship, Everett. Then, they'll sell the house." His words confirmed my worst fears, but he pressed on with determination. "But we've got a key advantage. You found out before they could act. That gives us time to get ahead of them." I spent the rest of the afternoon at his office, methodically building my defense. Step 1 was clear. I needed independent medical evaluations. 3 different doctors, Raymond insisted. "We want irrefutable proof of your mental capacity." In the days that followed, I visited 3 separate specialists. Dr. Martinez, a respected geriatrician, was emphatic after 2 thorough exams. "Mr. Everett, your mind is sharper than many patients 30 years younger." Neurologist Dr. Kim confirmed this with detailed cognitive tests. Psychiatrist Dr. Thompson was even more direct. "There's no sign whatsoever of mental decline or impaired decision-making." Raymond treated every report like it was gold. "This is our first line of defense," he said, filing them into a special folder. That week, I stayed calm inside the house, acting like nothing had changed. Tara kept making her calculated comments about my fragility, but now I had a different purpose for every conversation. Raymond had taught me to use my phone for discreet recording. "Wow, Everett, you've asked me that 3 times today," she'd say over lunch, trying to plant doubts about my memory. I'd smile and nod politely, but the phone in my pocket captured every manipulative word. It was important to document the elder abuse taking place. Jordan wasn't spared from my new documentation strategy either. "Dad, are you sure you can remember to take your meds by yourself?" he'd ask with that fake concern I now saw clearly. "Maybe Tara or I should manage that for you." All of it was recorded on my phone. What struck me most was how normalized their attacks on my autonomy had become. For them, questioning my ability had turned into daily routine. For me, each comment was another piece of evidence in their carefully laid trap. Then, during one of those recorded conversations, Raymond called with an unexpected proposal. "Everett, have you thought about selling the house?" The question caught me completely off guard. I stayed silent for a moment, trying to process what he'd just suggested. "Sell it?" I repeated, feeling a tightness in my chest. "Raymond, this house is all I have left of Margaret." He waited patiently before explaining. "I understand, my friend. But think about it. If you sell before they get guardianship, their whole plan collapses." The logic was clear, but my heart resisted. Raymond explained the strategy in more detail during our next meeting. "Everett, they can't contest a sale made while you were clearly proven to be of sound mind. We have 3 medical reports confirming your capacity." He leaned forward, speaking with the calm of someone who knew family law inside and out. "Once the property is sold, it doesn't matter if they gain guardianship later. What was done legally before remains valid." At first, the idea still felt like a betrayal of Margaret's memory. But then I began to understand it wasn't about giving up the house. It was about reclaiming my right to choose. The solution came when Raymond mentioned Dean Walker, an investor he knew. "Dean works with historic properties, Everett. He understands that some homes are worth more because of their story, not just their market value." The proposal was appealing. Dean would buy the house with a full confidentiality clause. The sale would be legally recorded, but completely discreet until the right moment. "He'll even let you stay in the house temporarily if you'd like," Raymond added. "But I'm guessing you already have other plans." He knew me well. As I quietly moved forward with selling the house, Tara still believed she had everything under control. In fact, she seemed more confident than ever, like she was approaching the finish line of a race only she knew she was running. "Everett, I'm organizing a special event here at the house next Saturday," she announced over Tuesday's breakfast. "It's going to be a very meaningful celebration." Jordan looked up from the newspaper, curious. "What kind of celebration, honey?" Tara smiled with that mystical air she used with her clients. "An ancestral ceremony and energetic renewal of this space." Jordan looked genuinely excited. "That's great, Tara. It'll be nice to have friends over, bring some new energy into the place." I sat there pretending to read my book, quietly marveling at the irony of it all. "What kind of ceremony is that?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Something tied to the house's history?" Tara practically glowed as she answered. "Exactly. We'll honor the past of this home and make space for its next chapter. It's going to be transformational." If only she knew the transformation had already happened 3 days earlier, when I signed the paperwork at the registry office. The days leading up to the event were surreal to watch. Tara threw herself into the preparations like she was planning the most important event of her life. She bought special scented candles, imported incense, colorful cushions to create what she called a sacred circle in the living room. She called dozens of people, inviting them to what she described as a historic moment of energetic transition for this ancestral home. Jordan helped move furniture, arranged the parking outside, fully convinced he was supporting something meaningful and spiritual. Their dedication was almost touching, if not for the twisted reality behind it all. All that week, I watched the preparations with a complex mix of emotions: pity, satisfaction, nostalgia, and a spark of excitement for what was coming. They were organizing an energy renewal ceremony in a house that technically no longer belonged to anyone attending the event. It was like watching a play where the main actors didn't know they were acting. Margaret always said life had a peculiar sense of humor. In that moment, I finally understood what she meant. Saturday was approaching, and I could hardly wait to see how it would all unfold. The day of the event arrived on a sunny Saturday morning. I woke up early to the smell of incense spreading through the entire house. Tara had gotten up before 6 to begin her final preparations, transforming my living room into a true mystical sanctuary. Colorful cushions were arranged in perfect circles on the floor, scented candles covered every available surface, and crystals of all sizes formed what she called an energetic field of transformation. By 7 in the morning, cars had already started pulling up. It was impressive how she'd managed to gather so many people for an event I knew would end very differently than planned. By around 9, the house was full of guests: middle-aged women in flowing clothes, men wearing stone necklaces, young people with spiritual tattoos. Tara's entire holistic therapy clientele was represented. They moved through the house commenting on the ancestral energy of the space and praising the host's spiritual sensitivity. Jordan greeted everyone with genuine pride, clearly pleased to see his wife being admired. I stayed quietly in my downstairs room, watching the activity through the window. In just a few hours, that celebratory atmosphere would turn into a family showdown no one was expecting. At exactly 10 o'clock, Tara began her speech on the front porch. "Dear friends, today we mark a very special moment in the history of this ancestral home," she said, using that solemn tone she saved for big occasions. "We are here to honor the past and make way for a new phase of energetic renewal." The guests stood in a semicircle, some sitting on the cushions, others leaning on the porch railing. Jordan was recording everything with his phone, documenting what he believed was a milestone in his wife's life. If only he knew he was capturing the prelude to the biggest surprise of their lives. It was during her speech that I saw the black car pull up at the corner. Raymond stepped out from the driver's side, adjusted his jacket, and checked the leather folder he was carrying. Our eyes met for a moment through my bedroom window. He gave a subtle nod. Everything was ready. I felt a mix of nerves and anticipation I hadn't felt in years. It was like being backstage at a theater, waiting for your cue to enter. The difference this time was that I wasn't just an observer. I was the lead in a twist Tara could never have seen coming. I decided it was time to join the celebration. I left the room and walked toward the porch, where Tara was still talking about cycles of renewal and transformative energy. When she saw me approaching, her face lit up with a smile I now recognized as calculated. "Oh, I'm so glad you decided to join us, Everett," she said, pausing her speech to include me in the moment. "After all, this ceremony is also about honoring your presence in this home." The guests turned to look at me with that condescending expression people use with the elderly in social settings. If only they knew who was really in control. "That's very kind of you to organize this, Tara," I replied sincerely. I truly didn't expect something so elaborate. She seemed to take my response as humble approval, because her smile grew even brighter. "This house deserves to be celebrated, Everett. It holds so much history, so much love within its walls." Jordan nodded eagerly, clearly moved by his wife's words. Exactly, Dad. This house is way too special not to be honored. The irony of his words was almost painful. They were celebrating a house that had already been sold 3 days earlier. That's when Raymond appeared at the front gate. He walked with steady steps along the sidewalk, carrying his leather folder like it was a secret weapon. The guests closest to the gate noticed him first, whispering to each other about the man in the dark suit who approached with such purpose. Tara stopped mid-sentence during her talk about ancestral energies and looked toward the direction everyone else was staring. When she saw Raymond approaching, her expression shifted subtly. She didn't know him, but something about his posture unsettled her. "Sorry to interrupt," Raymond said, as he climbed the porch steps with natural authority. "I'm Raymond Cho, Mr. Everett's attorney." The silence that followed was almost tangible. Tara looked from Raymond to me, trying to process what she'd just heard. "Attorney?" she repeated, as if the word itself was unfamiliar. Jordan stopped recording and lowered his phone, clearly confused. "Dad, why would you need a lawyer?" His question hung in the air like a warning of what was coming. I stayed calm, savoring the moment I'd imagined so many times over the past week. "Raymond is here because we have a few important documents to share," I explained, keeping my tone casual despite the rising tension in the room. Tara tried to regain control of the situation. "Well, what an interesting coincidence. Maybe we can talk about this after the ceremony." She turned to the guests with a forced smile. "My friends, let's continue with our celebration." But Raymond gently cut her off. "Actually, Mrs. Tara, what we need to discuss is directly relevant to this celebration." He gave the last word a weight that made several guests exchange uneasy glances. Raymond opened his folder and pulled out a sealed envelope. "Everett, would you like to do the honors?" I took the envelope from his hands, feeling the weight of the paper and the significance of the moment. The guests had gone completely silent now, sensing something serious was happening, though they couldn't quite tell what. Tara was visibly tense, fidgeting nervously with one of her necklaces. Jordan looked torn between curiosity and concern. "What is it, Dad?" he asked, his voice no longer casual. This was the moment I had waited for. I started opening the envelope slowly, deliberately drawing out the suspense. "It's about the future of this house, Jordan," I replied, pulling the documents from inside. "And about some important changes you both need to be aware of." Tara stepped forward, trying to get a glimpse of the papers. "What kind of changes, Everett? I thought we already talked about everything." Her voice carried a hint of disguised panic I had never heard from her before. Raymond stood beside me like a loyal shield. "Maybe it's best if you read it out loud, Everett, so everyone can hear." The air on the porch had turned to concrete. That's when I heard confident footsteps approaching the walkway. "Sorry I'm late," said a composed, respectful voice from the gate. "I'm Dean Walker." A man in a dark suit, leather briefcase in hand, calm and determined look. Tara's guests instinctively stepped aside to make way for him, as if they recognized an unspoken authority they couldn't quite define. Tara froze completely. Jordan turned pale, and I smiled for the first time in weeks, knowing the moment of truth had finally arrived. The energy renewal celebration was about to become a shocking revelation that would change everything forever. Dean Walker climbed the porch steps with the same natural authority Raymond had shown just minutes earlier. He greeted a few guests with a polite nod, but his focus was clearly on me, Tara, and Jordan. "Sorry to interrupt the celebration," he said, opening his leather briefcase, "but there are a few legal matters that urgently need to be clarified." Tara tried to maintain her composure, forcing a smile at the guests who were now murmuring among themselves. "No problem," she replied, though her voice betrayed growing nervousness. "Everett," Dean said, addressing me directly, "I'd like to personally hand you these documents." He pulled a thick envelope from his briefcase and handed it to me with formality. I could feel every eye on the porch locked onto the three of us, Dean, myself, and the envelope that would change everything. Tara stepped forward again, clearly desperate to see what was inside. "Everett, what are those papers? Can we talk in private?" Jordan also came closer, the pride he'd shown earlier gradually turning into confusion. I slowly opened the envelope and pulled out an official sheet stamped and sealed unmistakably. "It's the deed to the house," I announced, keeping my voice steady despite the adrenaline. "The new deed." The words echoed across the porch like distant thunder. Tara froze completely, like someone had hit pause on her very existence. Jordan blinked several times, slowly processing what I had just said. New deed? He repeated, as if the words were in a foreign language. Dean stepped in and addressed the small crowd that had gathered. To clarify the situation, I'm Dean Walker, real estate investor, and as of this past Tuesday, I'm the new legal owner of this property. His statement brought absolute silence to the porch. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. Tara finally found her voice, though it came out as a hoarse whisper. That's impossible. Everett wouldn't. He's not capable of. She abruptly stopped, realizing she'd already said too much. But the words were already out there. Not capable? I repeated, locking eyes with her. Interesting choice of words, Tara. She immediately tried to backpedal, panic starting to appear in her eyes. I didn't mean that. You're perfectly capable. It's just that decisions like this should be discussed with family first. Raymond chose that moment to step in, pulling out another set of documents from his briefcase. Speaking of family, he said in a professional tone, we also have here the formal revocation of the guardianship petition that was being prepared against Mr. Everett. Jordan turned completely pale at the word guardianship. Guardianship? What are you talking about? He looked from Tara to me, then to Raymond, desperately searching for an explanation that made sense. Dad, I'd never try to. Tara quickly tried to take control of the situation. Jordan, don't listen to them. They're twisting everything. I was only exploring care options as a precaution, nothing more. But her voice sounded too tense, too defensive to be convincing. Researching as a precaution? Dean cut in, documents in hand. Ma'am, we have evidence of medications picked up from the pharmacy under Mr. Everett's name without a valid prescription. Correspondence with doctors about unauthorized evaluations of mental capacity. Tara tried to interrupt. That's a misunderstanding. I was just being careful. But Dean continued relentlessly. Detailed notes interpreting completely normal behaviors as signs of dementia. Each item he listed made Tara more desperate in her denials. Tara's guests began quietly dispersing in awkward silence. Some whispered to each other as they headed to their cars, clearly uncomfortable with having witnessed something far more serious than a spiritual gathering. Others simply slipped away quickly, avoiding eye contact with anyone involved. The mystical celebration had turned into a legal exposé no one had expected. Within minutes, the once busy porch became nearly empty. Dean handed Tara one final document. This is an official notice of eviction. You have 10 days to remove your belongings from the property. Tara took the paper with trembling hands, still trying to maintain some dignity. This is ridiculous. I live here. I have rights as a daughter-in-law. Her voice rose, the mask of spiritual serenity finally slipping. Jordan finally found his voice, but it came out thick with confusion. Tara, explain to me what's going on. Seriously. She turned to him with pleading eyes. Jordan, they're making things up. I decided it was time to speak directly to my son. Jordan, for weeks you were part of conversations about my fragility and need for special care. Did you really think that was just loving concern? He lowered his head, avoiding my eyes. I assumed it was just precaution. Tara quickly seized on the opening. That's exactly what it was. I was worried about you, Everett. You've been forgetting things, repeating stories. Her desperate attempt to justify it all sounded increasingly hollow. That's when I heard a small voice from the front door. Grandpa? Theo stood in the doorway, holding a book in his hands. He had arrived earlier with Jordan, but had been playing in my room during the whole event. Now, with the porch nearly empty and the air thick with tension, he stepped forward hesitantly. Can we still read together? His question sliced through all the tension like a blade. I walked over to him and knelt down to meet his eyes. Always, Theo. This house doesn't matter anymore, but you do. Tara remained standing, still trying to argue with anyone who would listen. You don't understand. I was trying to protect this family. But her words echoed across an almost empty porch, with only Jordan left listening, and even he no longer seemed so convinced. The scented candles still burned, the crystals were still laid out in perfect circles, but the atmosphere of control she had built had completely evaporated. She hadn't just lost the house. She had lost her ability to control the story. And Jordan? Jordan had lost something he might never get back, my respect and my trust. Today I live in a modest townhouse in the old part of town, with 2 windows that overlook a park filled with century-old oaks. The move happened 2 weeks after that unforgettable Saturday. Dean kept his word and allowed me to stay in the house until I found a suitable place, but I no longer felt the desire to remain there. Too many memories had been tainted. Too many corners of the house now held memories of betrayal instead of love. The money from the sale gave me the freedom to choose where and how to live. I chose simplicity: 2 bedrooms, a small library, and enough quiet to hear my own thoughts again. I restore old books once more, not out of financial need but because it brings me peace. Theo visits me every Sunday without fail. Jordan drops him off around 10 in the morning and picks him up in the late afternoon. Our interactions are cordial but distant. He still tries to justify his role in Tara's scheme, and I still haven't fully forgiven his willful blindness. But Theo has blossomed in this new arrangement. He reads out loud now, proud of the skill he's developed, and picks the books he wants us to explore together. Last Sunday, we read about Ernest Shackleton's Antarctic expeditions. "Grandpa, he was brave like you," Theo said, not knowing the weight those words carried. For an 8-year-old, I had faced my own icebergs, and survived. I kept only a few things from the old house: the atlas with the golden key Theo loved so much, the wedding photo with Margaret in a simple frame, and the letter he wrote me years ago saying I was the smartest grandpa in the world. These items now sit on the desk in my new study, daily reminders of what truly matters. Margaret still appears in my dreams sometimes, always smiling, as if she approves of the choices I made. "You did what needed to be done," she seems to say. And for the first time in years, I believe she's right. True love doesn't disappear just because people try to manipulate it. Tara and Jordan divorced 3 months after everything happened. I heard from neighbors that she moved back to her hometown, claiming Everett created a toxic environment in the family. Until the end, she held on to the version that she was the victim of misunderstandings and elderly paranoia. Jordan got shared custody of Theo and now lives in an apartment near my neighborhood. He got a new job and seems to be rebuilding his life without his ex-wife's constant influence. In the few conversations we've had, I can tell he's finally understood how deeply he was manipulated. But some wounds take time to heal, and our relationship may never be what it once was. Raymond has become a true friend through it all. We meet for lunch once a month to talk about interesting legal cases and books we're reading. He told me my case led him to focus more on elder protection, helping other families in similar situations. "You were smarter than most," he said recently. "A lot of people realize too late." Dean Walker occasionally sends me postcards from his business trips, always signed, "Thank you for trusting me." The house has since been turned into a guest house for local artists. It's ironic, but it finally became what Tara always claimed she wanted: a space for creative renewal. In the end, I didn't have to throw anyone out. I simply reclaimed what was always mine: my voice, my dignity, my autonomy to make decisions about my own life. At 72, I've learned that being old doesn't mean being vulnerable, unless you allow it. Margaret used to say wisdom comes from experience, and experience comes from the bad decisions we make. Maybe she was wrong this time. Sometimes, wisdom comes from recognizing the bad decisions others are trying to make for you and having the courage to stop it. Today, when I open my atlas and see all the places Margaret and I visited together, I feel gratitude instead of nostalgia. The past taught me. The present belongs to me. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the right. Thanks for watching.